Good afternoon. Not one of you is for a loss of a story. Yeah? We are so glad that you are here. On behalf of Tatiana, I want to welcome, and Vlad and the entire family, welcome you all to this celebration of life for Steve, our friend. Before we get started with the actual service, there's a couple of thank yous I want to give, and one is to the Methodist Church for hosting this, and the folks here that set up the dinner for us afterwards. I really appreciate that and thank them. And the other thank you that just needs to be said ahead of time is for the dream maker, the Langdon and Donna, the Townsend family, and they're, as they affectionately call him, Daddy, that believed in Steve, that created the last chapter of his life with Blue Sky. And so the Townsend family were eternally grateful for those of you that have been part of that part of the hang gliding community. Wow. We are going to really enjoy this service. We've got some really good speakers here. What we're going to do is we have three different chapters that we've kind of coined as Steve's life. Chapter 1 with the Kitty Hawk years, and Chapter 2, the Harrisonburg years, and Chapter 3 was the Blue Sky years. We're going to kind of hear from different individuals on each one of those occasions. Before we do that, we're going to start with Billy Vaughn. He's going to come and read the obituary. So, Billy.
Steve Allen Wendt passed away unexpectedly on January 25th, 2024 at Blue Sky Flight Park near Manquin, Virginia from an unknown medical event. Steve was born in Sunbury, Pennsylvania on January 25th, 1958 and began his lifelong pursuit of flying in 1975, teaching himself to fly hang gliders. He completed a Bachelor of Science degree at Bloomsburg University and started teaching and coaching at the high school level, beginning his life's work as a positive influence and role model as an instructor in many disciplines. Known by many simply as Coach, Steve managed Kitty Hawk Kites hang gliding school at Jockey's Ridge beginning in 1983 and returned to coaching football and wrestling at Mandio High School in North Carolina from 1986 to 1991. He then moved to Harrisonburg, Virginia, where he taught math and coached both football and wrestling at Spotswood High School. He started his own hang gliding school, Blue Sky, during this period, teaching on weekends and summers until he moved to the flight park in Manquin to run his business full time. Steve was named Hang Gliding Instructor of the Year by the United States Hang Gliding Association in 2004, and in 2007, he received the NAA Safety Award. Steve was a highly motivated self-starter. He combined a tremendous work ethic, discipline, and his unique abilities as an educator to bring out the best in those he taught, whether it was algebra, wrestling, or hang gliding. Always generous with both his time and knowledge, Steve led by example, modeling the high standards of excellence he expected from his students. The success and exceptional safety record of his flight park is testimony to this, and his national reputation in the hang gliding community is legendary. Steve was preceded in death by his father, George Allen Wendt, and his brother, Derek Allen Wendt. He is survived by his mother, Margaret Lulu Wendt, his brother, Chris Allen Wendt, his loving wife of 15 years, Tatiana, Tatiana's mother, Elena, her son, Vlad, and his wife, Samantha, their son, Theodore, and Tatiana's sister, Marina, and niece, Sasha.
We're now going to hear from an individual that Steve trusted. He didn't let many people fly his bird, right? And if you got a chance to even do anything with his equipment, that was quite an honor. And so Tatiana has written a letter, and she's asked Lisa Kane to come and share her thoughts. Lisa, thanks.
Okay. Steve, I talk to you constantly in my mind. I try to tune into Steve's mode when I have to make decisions, and I had to make quite a few tough ones within the last 9 days. But it is not about me or my hurting heart. Plus, you've always hated drama or too many words about feelings. Actions were your love language, caring about those you love. I'm not going to tell people about how I feel about you either. You know everything. You've heard it many, many times. I didn't hold back, and I told you very often how much I love you and always will. There is no time or need to tell people about you and me or to describe our relationship and our love story. Our story is too unexpected, bright, romantic, funny, sweet, too deep, too painful, and tragic at the end. There are not enough words for that, plus you wouldn't want that. What you always were happy to talk about was your Blue Sky Flight Park. That place is a bright reflection of your brilliant, restless mind, your incredible energy, creativity, hard work, and love of flying. Your pilots knew it is Steve's way or no way. You have built that place based on your knowledge, experience, logic, and passion for this sport. But Blue Sky wouldn't be alive without your flying people. Your pilots, new and experienced, are your Blue Sky. You help them to grow wings. Being there, talking to them, I saw things that I wouldn't see anywhere else. Strong, unbreakable fellowship and friendship. You have to keep each other's wings straight because it is never easy to learn to fly. I thought sometimes these people smile the way babies smile. The purest, sincerest, relaxed smiles ever. You helped people to learn more about themselves, discover new strengths and qualities they never knew they had. Mistakes were not sugar-coated, and good work was praised. You helped them build confidence. You taught them to fly in so many ways, not just to be above the ground. One of his close friends once told me, Steve has to be different in his approach to each individual, as flying a hang glider is not at all natural for two-legged creatures like us humans. Steve had an uncanny sense to help each person overcome their own fears. He loved challenges and loved to win. Failure is not an option, he liked to remind me. He has built so much. However, what he is most proud of, are the friendships he has built. Tell me who your friends are, and I will tell you who you are. You amazing people have picked me up, spreading your wings beneath me to save me from falling down into an unknown, deep, dark place after Steve is gone. You gently carry me on, taking care of me and supporting me. I feel your support and strong, kind hearts. My beautiful, amazing friends have been helping me through this tragic and painful time of my life, and all of you have created a warm, strong circle, a life preserver for me. My Steve, your love made me stronger too. You know that, but every part of my existence misses you. One of your friends said that you probably became an eagle. You loved eagles for strength, confidence, and beauty, and for their incredible vision. Look for me when it is time for us to find each other again. After all, in this life, you found me across the ocean. I know we will find each other again. Love never disappears.
Tatiana's got an incredible command of the human condition and can capture the essence of what we all feel and are connected to. Here's the thing. Death sucks. Yeah? If we could say to Coach, why'd you do that? Right? I'd like to throw my hat down. What are you thinking? But like a leader, he's leading all of us here, right? But here's the thing. Death isn't the final answer. Because the spirit, of Steve is gone. The love, the commitment, the joy, the passion, the fervor, the bonds that he has created in all of us continues. Yeah? All of us are here because of that strong fiber, and that transcends even death. In that there is no sting. So we celebrate today, and in the next few speakers, I want you to hear the legacy and the character of our friend Steve Wendt. The first 3 chapters. We're going to have Chris Thompson come on up and share some stories about Coach in the first chapter. Chris.
I'm very honored to be able to be here and talk about what I like to call Coach's ground school. Coach showed up in Nag's Head having quit a real job to teach hang gliding, and there was this group of, I was probably the most ragtag of the group, but we were somewhat ragtag. Hang glider pilots are individuals, and so we run in all different directions at the same time. And he showed up, and he had never taught hang gliding except to himself, and so he had the best student to start off with. And then he was stuck with us, and he was a mountain pilot. And he came down there, and we were flying off of bumps that were on the back of mosquitoes. And it was pretty natural to us to do that. And Coach was a cautious dude, and we weren't. And we didn't teach him to teach hang gliding, but we gave him a run for his money. He showed up, he was a coach, so he had the tight polyester shorts that only a football coach could wear and think was attractive. And, he came down, and there he was, and he was a boss. Like, you knew he was in charge. And Coach he didn't demand, but you just respected that guy. And, but we gave him a hard time. I mean, the first instructor shirt he got us was made out of plastic. And if you've ever been to the Outer Banks of North Carolina in July and August, you do not want to be in a plastic shirt. So, John, we took those shirts off as soon as we crested the dune. And I don't think there were any of the females in our classes that minded, because running up and down those sand dunes, young guys, we were used to be in shape. But, I'm looking out, I was talking to Billy the other night on the phone, and I go, daggone it, Coach, you're trying to get the band back together. And then I realized I'm looking out here, it's an orchestra. And Coach was the maestro that brought us all together, and we all have talents. And one of the things he did leading us, he took this ragtag group and made us into a team. And you'll see pictures of the team that he created. And he understood that each of us had a talent. I've been a school teacher for 28 years because of Coach. And a lot of us are doing things because of Coach. And he lives on in everything that I do and everything that you do. And so Doyle said it really well. But it was fun to watch him learn to fly on a sand dune. There were bulkheads that stopped him. And he walked the way he walked for a reason. We'll just say that. It could have been the steroids. It could have been the bulkheads. But one of my best stories of flying with Coach, we're flying this place called Duck, which no longer, well, Duck exists, but you have to have a lot of money to be there. But we were flying this place, and if you got two gliders in the air at the time, you trusted the other person that was in the air with you because it was a dance. And so I danced with Coach. And he pulled up beside me and said, "Hey, watch this." And if you fly on a sand dune, pulling off a 360 is the ultimate maneuver. Coach pulled off a 360, but there was a rotor back there. And he piled it right into the sand. And so I thanked him. I said, "Thank you." That was awesome. But the thing about Coach was he just took it in stride. He was constantly learning. We never got plastic shirts again. The second year, he still had the collar on the shirt. We don't understand why he did that. And Coach was a little vain. He was. Because we thought, he turned 30 when he was with us. So we thought we should get him a present. And the younger people in the crowd have no idea what I'm talking about, but most of us do. We decided a bottle of Grecian formula would be an awesome thing to give Coach. It's called Just for Men now, I think. It was when I saw the depth of, because Coach was so strong, and we gave him that. He was so hurt and mad at us. It might have been my idea, but I'm not sure. It seems like it might have been. But I was embarrassed that I had hurt this guy. Like I truly hurt him. Okay, maybe the other guys did. But he hid that stuff. And Tatiana, I don't know how you did it, but you did it. Like you brought that out in him. There were a few deaths of ferrets that brought it out in him also. There's a lot of stories to tell about that guy. And is there an intermission after this? I'm very honored to be here and to get to talk about my friend Coach and to recognize the influence he's had on all of us. The wind was blowing straight down the runway today. I saw a leaf devil taken off. And so I know my buddy Coach is here with us, and he always will be. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris, for those words. Those of you that are in the back, there's seats up here if you want to come on in. You don't have to stand back there. Yeah, in the back there, you can come on up. We don't need you sitting in the back, stand in the back there. Yeah, come on up. We're among friends here. Yeah. Bruce, right up here. Have a seat next to John. Whole row up here, too. Yeah. Beautiful story, chapter 1. Chapter 2, Coach moved out to the Harrisonburg area, and we've got a couple of really fine speakers here. I'd like to invite up Eric and Baylor and Andy McMillan, please. Come on up.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, folks. My name's Eric Baylor. I taught with Steve at Spotswood High School for about 5 years, from 91 to 96. Chris, if I'd have known you wanted me to wear those coach's pants, man, I'd have broke those out of retirement today. Problem is, they'd be hanging by their knees by now, with all the rotting those things have done the last 25 years. But you got me thinking about that. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do my speech. So I wrote mine down. I wrote it old school. I hand wrote it. So if I pause in the middle of it, it's just because I can't read my own writing anymore. Part of that's because I'm going blind, and part of that's because I never could read my own writing. But I first met Steve in the summer of 1991. I just graduated from James Madison University. I was fresh out of college and eager to teach social studies and coach football and coach track. And Steve had just moved up from Manteo, North Carolina to teach high school at Spotswood, math, and he was going to coach football that first year. And to me, Steve was kind of that guy that was 10 years older than me, that was a guy I looked up to pave that first 10 years of your career in teaching and coaching. And so we hit it off right away. I was the offensive line coach. Steve was the defensive line coach. So our kids would go head to head every day. And if my guys were having a good day, that means Steve was having a bad day, and vice versa. So we were also 2 of 4 new teachers hired that year by Spotswood in 91, 92. And I can still remember us driving together to those beginning of the year teacher work days where it's just the new teachers. And you guys can imagine what Steve thought of those days, having to be brought in early to do teacher work days when Steve already knew how to teach math, and he didn't feel like he ought to be there, and he already had all those years of teaching experience, and he hated that. As that school year got started, we decided that each Friday morning we would eat the Shoney's breakfast buffet in Harrisonburg as long as we won. And we didn't really know how good we were going to be, but it ended up that I was lucky enough, and Steve and I were lucky enough to get to eat that Shoney's breakfast buffet for 11 straight weeks, because we went undefeated in the regular season. And it was all good until about 10 o'clock that morning, if you know what I mean. But it was from those breakfasts that I got to know Steve, and we talked a lot about his college days at Bloomsburg. We talked a lot about hang gliding, wrestling, and most importantly, how to be a good teacher and a good coach. And I learned from him those things. But most of all, I learned from Steve that in life, that I wanted to be a guy that if I said I was going to do something, I was going to do it. Because I learned a lot of that from Steve. Because if he told you he was going to do something, by gosh, he would break his leg to do it. Honesty and integrity really exemplified who Steve Wendt was. He was always honest. And he always told you how he felt about something. And I think it's really cool that you guys still call him coach. He was a man of substance, and he did not like all that educational mumbo jumbo. Case in point, fast forward to the spring of 1993. I was a second-year teacher, had a little incident with a young man in a classroom. It was a rough day. That kid had been getting under my skin for a while. Long story short, I kind of grabbed the kid, and, well, it was 1992, 93. I could do that then. Put my hands on him, got called to the principal's office, and as a teacher, I got a 5-day administrative leave. Well, when Steve found out, he was furious. Not with me, but with the principal for giving me that administrative leave, because we were buddies, and he said, if Eric's out of school, I'm out of school too. So sure enough, as I was packing my gear to go home and tell my first-year wife, my newlywed, that I had gotten suspended for a week, Steve grabbed his math stuff and took off and went home too. So each morning I get out of bed. I didn't tell my wife for about 3 days. I get up, put my tie on, leave the house. She'd leave to go to teach too, and I go over to Steve's apartment. And I'd hang out with Steve, and we go fishing. We went fishing a lot. I helped him fix hang gliders. I helped him stitch some hang gliders, but he wasn't getting my fat butt off the ground. So I admire all of you guys who've flown, because at 280 pounds, I don't fly very well. But Steve took those days off with me. And each day I was out, I'd tell Steve, hey, man, you probably ought to go back to school. You didn't get in trouble. I did. His response was simply, nope, it's not right. If you're out, I'm out. And I was totally blown away by that. And he kept saying it. If you're out of school, I'm out of school till you go back. And when you talk to the principal, you tell him that. And sure enough, the 5 days I was out, he was out for those 5 days. So again, integrity, honesty, a true friend is what I call Steve. To this day, he's the only friend I've had, and I've got a lot of friends, but he walked the talk in every facet of his life. Who else in this room is going to leave a job for 5 days because his friend got suspended for 5 days? All right, that's Steve Wendt. As football coaches, we had a prayer that Coach Joe Taylor, who's here today, brought with him to our team. We read it every week after every game, and I want to share it with you today because it made me think about Steve, because we said it together for a lot of time, for every game. After every game, we called it the Blazer Prayer at spots where we were the Trailblazers, and Andy's a prime example of that. He's going to talk to you here in a minute. But the prayer goes like this, and it just really exemplifies me thinking about Steve and our time together. So it goes like this. Oh Lord, as the battles go in life, we ask for what you feel is fair. A chance to go and strive, for courage to love and bear. When we win, let it be by the code. Faith and honor have I. And if we should lose, let us stand by the goal and cheer as the winners go by. Give us strength for the challenges we face, and have us each accept our place. Together we stand, one for all for one, 48 minutes, everything we've got till the final gun. Go Blazers. Steve, we love you and we'll miss you greatly.
Good afternoon. My name is Major Andrew McMillian. I am a wrestler and a friend of Coach Wendt. I'd like for you to take a second and just kind of look to your left and right and just think about how you can impact people. In the book of James, it says that life is really short. It comes in like the fog, the morning fog, and disappears really fast. So the time that we use is extremely important. Coach Wendt used that time extremely well, in my opinion. See, some coaches are just naturally talented. They're just really good. They could take an athlete like a piece of coal and light a fire on them and just make them glow and make them great and burn bright. And then some coaches can take that athlete and put the right amount of pressure on them and encourage them to constantly improve and make themselves better. And over time, they become diamonds. I believe Coach Wendt Coach Wendt's the ladder. I met Coach Wendt in '94. I was a middle school wrestler. My parents moved to an area. There was no wrestling program at Elkton, and my dad went to go find where can I wrestle. So I ran into Coach Wendt. He set it up with the middle school to get me transported over to a different school so I could wrestle there. And after my first season there, Coach Wendt was like, he realized that I wasn't getting anything out of Montevideo Middle School. So he talked to my dad and said, hey, let's get him to this wrestling camp with the high school, and then he could wrestle with us in 8th grade with us. So that's what we did. And then during that time there, Coach he did so much for so many different wrestlers, as he does for you guys. He was a phenomenal coach. He taught us discipline. He taught us dedication. He taught us determination. He taught us how to constantly better yourself, push yourself, make yourself better. Be proud of what you've accomplished, but don't be satisfied. Coach was he gave up a lot for us. He gave up a lot for everybody. He bought this stupid van. Like, there was this van. It was old. It was a piece of junk. It broke down all the time. But he knew that there were kids that could not get to matches, off-season tournaments, and camps and stuff. So he had this thing. I'm going to just buy this van, and we can take the ones who parents can't take them. We'll take care of them, do that. So he bought this van. We made fun of him for it because it was always broke down. But he did it. That's what he did. During the season, he would make sure the doors are open early so that a bunch of us could go in there and just work out. We would be in there in the dark, jumping rope, running stairs, wrestling on the mats when we weren't supposed to. But he would make sure the doors are open so we could get in there to do that. During the off season, he wanted you to make sure you got everything you could out of high school. He didn't want you just to focus just on wrestling. Hit every sport you can hit. If you're going to work, go work. And he wanted to hear the stories about it. He cared about each individual person because of who they are and whatever their goals were. Coach said, always create a goal and do what it takes to get to that goal. He pushed us to get to our goals, and he wanted to hear those stories. And he wanted to make sure that we did well in school. I was horrible at Spanish, and he made me, because I didn't want to do it, he made me go to Miss McDowell's room, who was a science teacher, to be tutored, so make sure I passed my Spanish classes. Coach cared. Coach was a phenomenal coach because he cared about everyone. He cared about everyone individually. It didn't matter if you was going to be a part of the wrestling team or the football team or whatever. He cared about who you were and what you wanted to accomplish, and he wanted you to be successful no matter what it was. I remember going to Miss Shomo's, up on Miss Shomo's farm. We used to go down there all the time. He had this like camp or whatever, and he would teach them hang gliding. My job was to run down with the hang glider, and he would go walk up with the client, I guess you call him, the client, and I would tote the hang glider back up the top of the hill. And then I would run right back down with him and do it again. It was a great leg workout for a young high school kid. But we had fun. We got up here and we talked a lot. There's a lot of the times Coach was talking about just chatting with Coach Wendt. I mean, that was what that was all about. So, but Coach didn't hang around spots, but as you know, he left a little earlier to do his hang gliding business, and that was about my sophomore year. So fast forward to my senior year in high school, I got to preface the story a little bit. There was a gentleman who was a two-time AAA state wrestling champion. He was considered one of the best in the state at the time. He moved to AA, which was the level school that I wrestled at. And for me to wrestle him, I had to bump up a weight class, and I had to meet him at the state tournament because we weren't in the same area. And I wanted to do that because this guy was a stud, and he was one of the best, and I wanted to do it. But my high school wrestling coach was like, look, you can win states at 25. I talked to my dad about it. My dad's like, dude, this is your life. You make your decisions. So I called Coach. So Coach's explanation was a little bit more eloquent than this, but it was basically, so if you got that gold medal 10 years down the road, are you going to be proud of that gold medal? Or are you going to be disappointed that you didn't take on the champ? I went and took on the champ. I lost, but I took on the champ. So I called, but when I made it to the finals, when I made it there, one of the first people I called my mom first, and I called Coach. I said, Coach, I made it to the finals. I'm going to wrestle Victor Jackson. I didn't know at the time. I didn't know where Manquin was. I had no clue where Manquin was. But he made it from Manquin to the Salem Civic Center in time for me to wrestle. He was there right next to the mat for my state finals. That meant a lot to me. So through college, we kept up during college, and just I wrestled D1 for a little bit. Then I took some time off, and then I went back and wrestled again at a different school. But during that time off, my high school, Spotswood High School, didn't have a wrestling coach. So I was like, I'll do this. I'll coach. I had no clue what I was doing. No clue. You can't just become a coach, right? And so I suckered my friends, Marty Deering and Josh Malin. I suckered them in. Hey, guys, let's go do this thing. We didn't know anything about coaching, but we knew that if we just did what Coach did, we'll copy the same thing, it'll work out, right? Our team sucked. They were bad. We were 0 and whatever, and we tied 2 teams twice, right? That was it. So we had 2 ties, and we was really bad. But at the end of that season, we had this little ceremony to say high fives, all the good stuff that happened to them, to the kids and stuff. I got a note from a letter from one of the dads. He sent it to the AD. This was the copy of the letter. And it read basically that, hey, look, this sport did something really good for his son, and he appreciated how much that the coaching staff cared about their son. His son wasn't doing that great and was struggling, and this sport and that opportunity to coach him really helped him. Coach Wendt cared for us. We didn't know what we were doing as coaches. We just knew if we do this, this might work. And it did. For that one kid, it mattered. And for a young 20-some-year-old idiot, I was hooked on coaching because of that. Coach made me a coach because of that opportunity. So went back to college. I met this beautiful blonde. She was from Pennsylvania. I was like, hey, Coach, I'm going to get married, but I got to get married in Pennsylvania because she's from there. He's like, you got a good one. She's from PA. My grandparents did not show up to my wedding, but my wrestling coach was right there. And he was with some of my teammates. We got a picture of it. I gave it to Tatiana. That means a lot. Fast forward, went to, I'm in flight. I just finished flight school. I flew Black Hawks for the U.S. Army for a little bit, and I'm finishing up flight schools. I have a brand new couple-month-old kid and a crying wife because we didn't have any money. We was like, we had to go back to Virginia, somewhere around the Richmond area, and we don't have a place to live. So I called Coach up. Hey, Coach, I know you're from this general vicinity. Can you help us out? Well, he works with Mr. Townsend, and they find us a place. I didn't even know where this place. We pulled up to the house in a U-Haul, and that's where we lived. And the cool story about that is that we lived there for a little while. It was a great place. We ended up taking over. My wife helped me. We ended up taking over the King William Wrestling program, and Coach Wendt, because I lived right next to the airport. Coach Wendt he walked me through the process and helped me rebuild the King William Wrestling program from four wrestlers to having an elementary program, a middle school program, and a high school program that was top 10 in the state 2 years in a row and was 12th the year before that. And it was all because he paid attention to us. I have 2 other friends who really want to make sure that that you guys knew that they really want to be here. But those 2 guys, one, he's with his son who's wrestling in the regional tournament right now. And the other one is coaching a team in the wrestling tournament. So it really means a lot that you guys are here for them, and they're sorry they couldn't be here. But I want to leave you with this last little bit here. In the NFL National Championships last week, there was a Dick's Sporting Goods commercial that said, "Sports change lives. Coaches change lives. And coaches like Coach Wendt creates diamonds." Thank you.
Makes you want to applaud, doesn't it? It's like, wow. Yeah, we can do that. Coach would applaud. He would. I think we're starting to hear the fibers that wove all of us together. Chapter 3, Blue Sky, Matt Christensen. Where are you at? Come on up, Matt.
Good afternoon. Wow, I am humbled to be here. I got a call one morning a few days ago from Lisa. And as much as I love her and love to talk to her, I had a feeling that something had happened. But we caught up, talked about what she was up to and what I was up to and what life had been doing for us in the last few years. And I thought, okay. And then with an articulate eloquence that's uniquely Lisa's, she transitioned. To let me know that we had lost our friend Steve. And I was honored to have been thought of as somebody that might be able to share a few words. And certainly humbled after listening to everybody else's experiences with Steve. In preparation for this, I actually watched a couple of YouTube videos on controlling your emotions. I will be thumbs down and commenting. You know, initially there was an email that went out that we'd like you to take, a few minutes, 5 minutes, and share some thoughts. And I've sat over the last week and pondered about my experiences with Steve and all the great friends that I made at Blue Sky and all the great friends that I made as a result of my time at Blue Sky. And I was just at a loss as to which part of the picture I could paint for everybody. I mean, I could do an hour on launch etiquette and the queue. I could talk about holding court with all the other pilots in the pavilion. I could talk about watching Steve's reaction to an event that we knew he didn't like. And it's coming off. No, it's not. Yep, it's off. But I thought maybe sharing a little bit of a context of how I came to be here in front of you guys might give a little bit of an insight to my perspective. Like some of you, I was just a kid that was born dreaming about flying. I mean, my earliest memories were filled with the thought of flying and soaring, and it was never jets or, the beloved P-51. It was always the simple aircraft, the ultralights of the 70s and the gliders and the regalos. And as a kid growing up in the 70s, we didn't have the luxury of having everything on demand at your fingertips. So it was a library book or an article in a magazine. Maybe a clip of hang gliding on one of 3 channels that we had. I was visiting some family in, trying to recount the date, but I'm just not good at that. Had to be the very late 70s. And I was at a softball game, and out of the corner of my eye, something caught my attention. And as I focused in, I realized it was 2 hang gliders. And it was absolutely blown away. I mean, as a young kid that dreamed of hang gliding, this seemed like something that would be accessible to me, something that I could do, something that was within reach. And I knew at that time it was something that I had to find my way to. And, the way life works, fast forward, I woke up one day and life had pulled me away from the mountains of California and Montana and Utah that I loved. And I found myself in the Beltway traffic and contemplating, what my life would be. I love to be outdoors. I love to be in the mountains. I love to fish. I loved virtually anything outdoors, snowboarding, rock climbing, ice climbing, everything. Hang gliding was the one thing that I never found my way to, but that I knew I wanted to do most, but the circumstances were never right. And then I woke up and I was a dad. Three kids, a wife that's supportive to a fault, and it felt like my hang gliding dreams were further away than they ever would be. And a lot of times slugging in Beltway traffic gave me opportunities to ponder and think about the dreams that I had held of flying. And the older I got and the more responsibility I got and having now my third child, it felt irresponsible and it felt like something that was selfish for me to pursue. But nonetheless, one night I hit a wall and I started doing some internet research to figure out where I could at least take a stab at this. It took me about an hour to realize I was either going to California, Utah, Tennessee, Florida, New York, or someplace called Blue Sky in Manquin, Virginia, about 100 miles south of me. And I talked to my wife and I told her, and she knew I wanted to fly. She knew I had dreams of flying. For my first birthday after we got married, she gave me a pilot's ground school kit, which I thought was amazing, even though we could barely afford the ground school kit, let alone I couldn't imagine how we could have possibly have ever afforded lessons. So I hauled that thing around from move to move to move. And finally I had to throw it away because it was heartbreaking to see it, knowing that it wasn't going to happen. And so the next day I was in a job site trailer and I picked up my phone and I dialed Blue Sky. And on the other end of the line, a flip phone snapped open. Blue Sky. And after a brief conversation, Steve let me know that the weather looked iffy, but he was going to be there regardless. And if I wanted to risk the trip and the conditions worked out, we'd do a lesson. And I can vividly remember that drive down thinking, I was nervous and anxious, and it wasn't because I was worried about the process where the flying would be like. I was worried that maybe hang gliding wouldn't be what I had always dreamed it would be. So I pulled up and I was the only one there that day. And lucky for me, the conditions turned out to be pretty good. Steve gave me a quick ground school once over on the anatomy of a hang glider and basic rules of flight, and then introduced me to this system of scooter towing that he had refined. And throughout that first lesson, I felt at ease. And that sense of selfishness that I had for pursuing this thing suddenly diminished. And I was inspired. I felt confident that Steve was the right guy. He was the guy that would help me finally realize that dream as a young 30-something. And I was a dreamer and had been for a long time. After that first lesson, I was confidently running a glider into the air and starting to comprehend what it would take to land. And every subsequent lesson was more and more rewarding, and it only got better. I would hang around like many of the students did and sit in the pavilion and watch the experienced pilots show up. And I would marvel at them flying, getting off the truck and soaring and scratching at cloud base. And it was just mind-blowing to me. But, you know, there was no rushing the process with Steve. And I wasn't in a rush. I was never in a rush. I saw a couple people that weren't. It didn't work out well. Steve was nothing if not patient in the process. And he had an amazing tact for reading his students. As I progressed to those first higher toes and then releasing and feeling the joy of my first untethered flights, I was beginning to get an appreciation for what Steve had invested in building Blue Sky. And watching the community of people, an eclectic group of dreamers that had come together and gone through the process. And in that process, Steve was vested in every one of us. You know, he would have conversations with me about my son. You know, we shared a passion for wrestling. I was a wrestler and a wrestling coach and traveled the country with my son. And Steve was always eager to get an update, get some insight, wanted to know what was next. And in wrestling, I've wrestled my entire life and been around sport wrestling. I've often said, you know, at some point in time, these athletes need somebody new to prove something. They need somebody new to prove something to. You know, dad becomes like white noise at some point in time. And the coach that's coached them all through grade school, middle school can, you know, at some point in time for them to peak and really realize their full potential, they need somebody new to prove something to. And Steve was that guy for a lot of us. He was commanding and firm. He was an amazing teacher. I have a lot of great friends. I'm blessed in that regard. And any other friend, I would be confident to jump in their golf cart and drive it at any point in time. But Steve's, absolutely not. There really was a sense of pride if Steve turned you over loose on a piece of equipment, or to grab something, or carry something, or jump in the golf cart. I was like, man, okay, all right. My time at Blue Sky truly changed my trajectory in life. And as I sat here and listened to everybody else speak, there's a common thread. You know, I think about the things that I've done in my own life and the people that I may have infected. And you look at Steve, he truly changed the trajectory of people's lives. You know, I traveled places and saw things and met people and made career decisions based off the gift of flight that I got from Steve. And everybody that I grew to know through Blue Sky had their own story. And it's truly inspiring to sit here and hear those. You know, among the lessons and the sewing and the arrow towing and the flight reports, a little bit of broken aluminum here and there, Tatiana and Vlad showed up, and we all watched an amazing convergence of people who were brought together. And we watched Steve's trajectory get changed. And it was amazing. And I feel truly blessed to have been part of it. You know, Steve could have done anything. He was an engineer and a woodworker, an electrician, a plumber, sewer. And, you know, as I rode down here today, and I typed things out, none of which I think I've even hit on. I thought, you know, think about how amazing it is. Think about how amazing it is. We all made this pilgrimage as pilots to blue sky. And most of us knew nothing about flying, nothing about hang gliding. And you meet this guy that has an impact on you such that you trust him from those first days when you're trying to figure out how to untangle a training harness and get into it. You know, no, that's a shoulder strap. No, your other leg. You're right. You know. To the next thing you know, you're suspended underneath a glider that's basically made out of lawn furniture. You're hanging in a harness that Steve crafted himself, attached to a winch that he constructed and fabricated, which you can't even comprehend how it even works. And you're about to be slingshot 1,000 feet into the air. There's no real ramp up to that. You're going to say, go to cruise, and you're going to pull a trigger when he honks the horn. And it is on. But the one thing you knew was that if you were on the truck, if Steve gave you the nod, and that was the night, and you were on the truck, if you were on the truck, you were 200% ready to be on the truck. And I've been around a lot of operations, a lot of schools, hang gliding, not so much since Steve hang gliding. And what an amazing contrast that is. You know, you show up at hang gliding at Blue Sky, you're kind of in this nest. You get a weather report from Steve. Peter comes in. Okay, we know these guys. We got our bearing. Okay, it's good. We know our indicator. You get outside of that. Your first venture outside of that as a Steve Wendt pilot, and you show up someplace else, and you're like, whoa. We are unfreaking tethered here. I mean, I need a flight report from Steve. I need to know. I need a weather briefing. I'm not comfortable with this. I don't know how many times we could be someplace and think, what would Steve say about this? What would Steve think about this? A group of us made the trek 2012 to the Tennessee Tree Toppers Team Challenge. And we were tasked with coming up with a name for our team. And it took us about 5 minutes to come up with the SOBs. We were the Sons of Blue Sky. And you realize right away the respect that you got when you ventured out in the community, when people knew that you were a product of Steve Wendt. You had kind of come through the Harvard of hang gliding. I showed up at Kitty Hawk one time after only taking a few lessons, and it was the hang gliding spectacular. I met Bruce there. And all I had said was, yeah, I've been studying with Steve Wendt, and I said, okay, grab a Falcon and a harness. I had never foot launched a hang glider before in my life. I never even assembled one. Okay.
My first foot launch ever was in the hang gliding spectacular. I came back and told Steve, and he's just.
Did you tell him I told him?
We're blessed to have had someone like Steve in our lives. We're blessed to have had him impact all of our trajectories in a way that brought us here together. And I'm proud of the decisions that I've made because of the influence that Steve had on my life. I'm grateful for all the friends that I've made in this community, and I just can't imagine where I would be right now without the influence that he's been in my life. And it's truly impossible to convey that unless you were one of those people that was lucky enough to spend time with.
Thank you. Beautiful words. Thank you for taking all that. It was beautiful. All see ourselves in that. We have one more speaker here that'll bring our eulogy, our time together. Billy.
I wrote it all down, and it won't be as long. So I met Steve when he was my first hang gliding instructor in 1984 with Greg Ball, who's here. He gave me and Greg our first jobs in hang gliding in 1985, and I worked for and with Steve and flew with him ever since. We've heard some great things about Steve today, amazing stories. His life as a teacher, as a coach, as a mentor, and as a role model. And he was all of those things to many people. And his sudden passing has sent shockwaves through the multiple communities of the people he touched. Steve started flying in 1975, appropriately enough by building a glider from a kit and teaching himself. His father helped him convince his mother that hang gliding was probably safer than the dirt bikes he was riding. And Steve pursued it, banging his knuckles at the hill across the street from his house. But he carefully educated himself. And over the years, he taught himself to do many things. You've all heard how many hats the guy wore. He designed and built and perfected multiple kinds of towing vehicles. He taught himself to sew hang glider sails. He taught himself to sew harnesses. He designed and built gliders, which is not really done much anymore. He built his own training gliders. He built an airplane from a kit specifically designed to tow hang gliders, the Dragonfly. It's our industry standard. And he didn't just put the kit together. He put together one of the best flying Dragonflies. I flew the airplane, but I don't have a lot of experience in Dragonflies. But Lisa has a ton, and Johnny and Joe, and they, to a fault, all said that that was the best one they ever flew. It was perfectly balanced. The stick forces are perfectly balanced. That was his first airplane. He was not afraid of any kind of a challenge. He'd just figure out how to do it, and then he would do it with a keen eye for the detail that would make it work and work safely and perform well. And as you guys all know by now, Steve was known as coach to many of us, and he had the physical presence of an athlete, right? He wasn't a great big guy, and he wasn't really intimidating, but he was strong and formidable. And he didn't necessarily command respect, but he certainly didn't demand it, but he absolutely earned it. Absolutely. And he had the voice of a coach. Even when he wasn't yelling, his voice projected, and you could hear it all over the flight park. He could be short and sarcastic when frustrated with students who performed below his standards. More than once, I saw him stand over a student who had bellied in and say, "What'd you do that for?" But as real as his frustration for that kind of thing might have been, it was never mean-spirited. And he never said that to any student who wasn't ready to handle it. He read the relationship between the student and the teacher in a way that he knew how to communicate individually. And this is ringing all the cherries with all the stuff you guys have said. Those students would get up and do it again, and the next time with a little more focus and a little more attention. I call that Steve's beat me up some more quality. You just wanted to excel for the guy, and excel we all did, all of us, the football players, the wrestlers, the hang glider pilots, the algebra students. That kind of brusque demeanor that he had, it was partly an act, but it was also just who he was, but it was never mean. Something amazing happened in 2008. Steve met Tatiana, and they were married on January 28th, 2009. Pleasantly surprised might describe my reaction to that initial news. But that Tatiana is so kind and lovely, so intelligent, and such a good match with Steve was not surprising. Steve was never one to wear his heart on his sleeve. But even when he was teasing her, you could see the depth of their connection. We all could. And yes, Steve's love for Tatiana. In speaking recently with a few of you folks who knew Steve well in the pre-Tatiana years and through their 15 years of marriage, we agreed that some of the sharper corners of Steve became maybe a little more rounded these last few years. Steve was incredibly lucky to have found Tatiana, and we're all lucky she found her way to Steve and to us. I have to finish with a story, but I got to set it up. So I had an airplane, super floater. It's an ultralight sailplane, no engine, right? Glider. Lawn chair with wings is a good way to describe it. And I've had it at the flight park. I still have it there. But in 2012, I flew it and broke it. And you don't need to know the story. It's a horrible one. But the repair was really complex, and I will spare you the details. It was way more than I could take on. I tried to talk myself into it. There was no way. And I couldn't afford to have anybody do it. It was going to be expensive. So that airplane sat in a box for many years here at the flight park. And finally, another hang glider pilot got interested in it, and he had money to burn. And he talked Steve into taking an entire winter and working on this repair. It literally took him all winter to do. And so when we got it flying again, when Steve got it ready to fly, I came down and flew it, and it flew just fine. It was so great to be back in my favorite flying toy, my lawn chair with wings. So the day after I flew it again for the first time, I sat down and wrote him an email, just a thank you email. And bear with me while I try to get through reading this to you. Well, Coach, what can I say that you don't already know? You've been a constant in my hang gliding career at pretty much every milestone. First lesson, check. First mountain flight, check. First day with a new wing, check. Lookout Mountain, Georgia, check. Marina Beach, California, check. Quest Air in Florida, check. Dark days, check. Bunches of first, a constant, like unchanging in value. And yesterday, pretty huge milestone. I had to look up how long it's been. It was 7 years ago. And you were, without a doubt, the best boss I ever had, ever, at any job, ever. I remember once getting mad about something at Kitty Hawk Heights. Okay, there were multiple times that kind of thing happened. But anyhow, one time in particular, I went off on you because of something, and you were the manager. I went off on you because you were the manager. And whether my anger was meant for you or not, you came back to me the next day and said something like this: "I'm not sure why you're so mad or what I did, but I'm sorry." I wish I could remember that story in better detail. I can see the scene in the parking lot between the shop and the reservation area. That story is huge in my memory, and I've told it many times to my kids as a way of showing what leadership is, how to lead by example. I love telling that story. I never played team sports, but I've been around long enough to know the complex respect that exists between players and coaches. There's a gift of coaching that you have, the ability to push when they need pushing, pull when they need pulling, and the knowledge to know when to do which. And you know when to go the extra mile to bring the struggling ones back into the fold, leading by example. So I don't call you coach lightly. I mean it with all the respect you deserve. What you've been to me is way beyond the current miraculous triumph of getting the super floater back together, which is, by the way, the single most impressive combination of technical expertise, perseverance, and unfailing optimism that I've ever witnessed. Nah, it's a bit more than that. It's all of it. So when I say thanks doesn't even begin to describe it, I hope you know I'm not kidding. See you this weekend, Billy. Tatiana told me in confidence later that that email made Steve tear up. A very uncoach-like thing to do. And was certainly not my intent, and I didn't quite know what to think of it at the time. And Steve and I never talked about it. Eulogies are awful in that we say the nicest things about the people who can no longer hear us. When I found this email the other day, I realized that I'd actually accidentally let Coach know that I loved him, something I would no more have said to him out loud than I would have challenged him to a wrestling match. And I am eternally grateful to Tatiana for letting me know that he heard me say it. I hope all of you here today can let the people you love know it in one way or another, especially the ones who would never hear it in so many words.
Chapter 4. Where do we go from here? We got Vlad, Tatiana's son, is going to play for about a minute or two. Come on up. Many cultures, tribes, traditions around the world have different ways of letting their loved ones go. Today, we're just going to take a moment and listen to Vlad. The picture that I have is us sitting perhaps on the edge of Woodstock. I'd like in your own way to ponder the words that you just heard here. Perhaps over the next year, 2 years, maybe some of the words here have inspired you to another chapter in your own life. Send a text to Tatiana. Say, this is Coach's chapter 4. Remind her that we're all still here and supporting her and with her over the next years to come. I wonder what all of our chapter 4 will look like with Steve. The bond that he gives us all pulls us together, and that never dies. But I think we need to let him go. And so right now, as Vlad plays for a minute in your own way, say goodbye and let Steve go to eternal peace. Thanks, Vlad. I'm done. I'm just going to play. You please stand with me. Let's pray. Father God, into your hands we commit our friend Steve. To you, we give him to you. May your peace that passes all understanding, beyond our comprehension, each of our hearts. The Spirit of Steve live in us and through us. May allow his heart to rest in peace, eternal peace. We ask this in Jesus' name. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Now comes the real meeting and time. The church has prepared a fellowship for us over here. Please don't take off. Come on over and join us over in the fellowship hall. And then I was asked to let everyone know that later on, after this is over, those of you that are familiar with Mexico, some will be gathering over there to have some time of fellowship over there as well. Again, on behalf of Tatiana and the family, thank you for coming and being a part of Steve's celebration. Go in peace. And, you come this way.